Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Listen Up. We're here at the Land Information Services headquarters in Oklahoma City. What we do on Listen Up is we try to find people that are generating positive vibes in the community, trying to team build, trying to create a space that is something that people can learn and grow. And I don't think there's anybody better than our guest today, and that is Mr. Derrick Sier. The crowd goes wild. Derrick is an old friend of ours who I worked with at Chesapeake years ago. He's a team builder, he is a motivator, he's an author, and I thought today that we could sit down and talk to him and just find out more about what has made his career growth and how he is positively affecting those that he's coming in contact with during 2020 and beyond.
Yeah.
Because these have definitely been some challenging months that we've had.
My goodness.
But Derrick, welcome. We really appreciate you coming on to this.
Thank you.
And I guess to start off, just give us a rundown. What we've done with everybody is what has happened over these last, let's say, 11 months as the pandemic started. How has this affected your life and really everything that you've kind of had going on?
Definitely. So, we all know that the impact is multi-layered, of course, right?
Right.
People's jobs, education, the way that people not only parent but homeschool, travel.
Now you have kids, right?
I do have kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old.
So doing homeschool?
Yeah, homeschool. They're doing the virtual option.
How's that going?
It's going pretty good. They are excited to get back. And so in the fall, here in Oklahoma City, they took them back for a week.
Right.
And then sent them back home. Right.
Because were they doing full weeks on, full weeks off, or was it like a couple days?
It was like A-Day, B-Day.
Right. I saw that.
Yeah, 2 days on, 2 days off, and then one like virtual day or something like that. And in that small amount of time, just kind of these pockets of outbreaks happened.
Right.
And so they tried. I give it to them. They tried. But then they ended up sending them back home for the rest of the semester. We know that they'll be back. They'll try again in February, and our kids are on board.
Nice.
And so one of the things that we've done during this time is not only learning to adapt, but also learning to empower our kids.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
It's very difficult, the decisions that they have that they're not used to. Right. It's wake up, go to school, play a sport, be in a class with 30 people, hug, high five, they're passing drinks back and forth, they're sitting on a bus with 50 other kids. Like, that has changed dramatically.
And will we ever get back? I mean, there's going to be things that are going to be long-term changes.
Yeah.
That it's going to take years for us to see the full effect
Agreed.
of what 2020 and living through a pandemic really does for all these future generations. So yeah, like the high school, grade school, every one of those kids is living through something really unique right now.
And it's something that none of us have had to live through.
Right.
And so the grace that I try to extend my kids is one, when they have these little meltdowns of, I want to see my friends. Like, when they go through that, I try to extend the grace. And the way that I do this, I try to empower them with other decisions they can have.
Nice.
So one of the things that we did for Christmas is we tried to beef up a home station. Right? It's like right now they've had phones, they've had laptops. Well, it's like, hey, what else do you want to do? And they're like, we want a garden. And so we hired an agriculturalist to come and map out our backyard.
No kidding.
And so we're going to have four 6x10 12-inch raised beds.
That's
and
awesome.
They are going to be out there with hands in mud, right?
That is
You guys are going to be here a lot. We're going to put you to work. What else do you want to do? My daughter said she wanted to pick up electric guitar. So we went and bought her a little amp with a guitar, 1/4-inch cord, and all the YouTube she can have. My son, he wants to build. He wants to do woodwork.
Right.
And so we got him sanders, a little tool kit, drill kits, a saw, and we have a garage full of just random scrap wood that I've found on the side of the street. And so one of the things that we've tried to do to adapt to this remote and virtual, this distancing concept, is to give them more options at home and empower them with choices. Because what they've been told is what they can't do, right? But what we're telling them now is what you can do. When you feel like options are being removed, you almost feel helpless, right? Like you don't have a choice. But when it's like, okay, I know you got some things taken away, right? And things are different. Let me provide you some other alternatives that they won't replace, but they will supplement what you're used to.
That's fantastic.
Now, I'm going to give all the credit to my wife. I'm going to give it to her. I just went swiped the card and picked up stuff. I got a little hatchback on my car, so I just pick up She's like, hey, we need a guitar. I'm like, done.
Got it.
Ask no question. She's way smarter than I am, man.
Well, I mean, you need the drum set at some points.
Yeah.
And I mean, we get the full Rock Band thing going.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're just saying of like the guitar, the raised beds, everything like that's fantastic for your kids, and it definitely shows your commitment to parenting, commitment to family, and really how much like building them throughout this time has meant to you.
Yeah.
That's huge, and that kind of goes into to get that family first and to get kind of this background. Give us a little background on you, on like how you grew up and where you grew up. Well, is it Oklahoma City? Or?
Tulsa.
Tulsa. Okay.
Yeah, grew up in Tulsa. So I grew up in North Tulsa. For anybody watching this familiar with that, 52nd Street North. That is about as north as you can get before you get into Turley and Skytook.
Okay.
And so grew up in the same square mile from the time that I was born till I was about 10 or 11 years old. Then ventured out and went to middle school across town, high school at Booker T. Washington High School. But growing up, man, it was really in our family.
What year, Booker T?
99.
99. So, and I was Ponca City.
Okay.
And you guys would come over and you would rip us apart.
Which sport?
Football.
Okay.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrifying. But we would always have a packed stadium because everybody wanted to see the band, because the band was fantastic. The band was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was the band nerd in Ponca City.
Yeah.
And we were furious because nobody would ever come to see us, but they always wanted to come see Booker T. So that's my little tangent on that. But fantastic. That's awesome. You grew up there.
Yeah.
That's really
I'll
cool.
give you a little side note on Booker T's band. That was the very first time I had seen anybody pelvic thrust with an instrument. That was very like with the saxophone, they're like boom, dun 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 dun.
We did not do that at Ponca City.
No? But you all had pelvics and you had instruments. How come you just didn't thrust
We
them?
did. Yeah, it was not in the cards for Ponca City, Oklahoma. No, and still probably not.
Still probably not. So rewind from high school, from middle school, just being young and seeing the way that my dad not only loved his family, right, not just our immediate family, because we're an extremely blended family. Right, my dad had 5 kids by 2 other wives. My mom had 2 kids by 2 other men. Then they had me together, right? And so you think of all these families. My dad tried his best not only to pull our family together, but he extended that same intentionality out into the community. So one of the things that I love to share about my dad are these red truck stories, right? And my dad had this red truck, and he would drive up and down the street. And he would honk his horn, just beep, beep, beep. And kids would come out of the houses, jump in the back of the truck. And Dad would take them to the park, which was down the street. Now, the lady at the park, the man at the park, that they both had keys to the park, let my dad come in. And my dad would coach whatever sport was in that season, baseball, football, basketball. He taught kids how to play table tennis, how to shoot pool, how to wrestle. He taught swimming classes. And so my dad would bring all these kids from the community up there. He would feed them, and then if they had dirty clothes, he would wash their clothes.
That's awesome.
At the end of the night, right, this is probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock, because you get out of school 3, 4.
Right.
He would then go back and then drop them off. Just drive down the street, beep, beep. Parents would come out, kids would go out with their little bags, with the little to-go plates. And so I learned from a very early age that we were in the business of people, right? We are in the business of people. We have so much extra, even in North Tulsa, right? Having a 2-parent home and extra, right, meant that you had probably more than a neighbor. And so for us to have that example of my father, right, not only our family, right, once our family is done and we have extra, then let it bleed over into the community. So I learned very early on, 5, 6, 7 years old, that we are in the business. We are in this world to not only connect to certain people, but how can we get outside of our own little bubble?
That's fantastic. And he was probably doing all this with a full-time job too, right?
Oh, full-time. He had 2 jobs.
Right.
He had 2. My dad gave me my first job. You know what my first job was? My first job was cleaning the white walls on tires.
No kidding.
Dad he drove buses for a living, and then he would come home, and on the weekends he would detail cars all day. And so we had like Cadillacs and Buicks and Lincolns. Like they would be parked in our front yard, and I would get $5 a tire. And I had the little blue SOS pad, and you would just scrub the little, and he'd come back through and he'd like wash it off and he'd be like, okay. Or he'd be like, oh, you missed a spot. That was my first job.
Okay. That's amazing. That's fantastic. And that definitely, you can see how that's kind of pushing you and kind of putting you into that people first movement. And then, so what were kind of the first jobs you, washing white wall tires?
Yeah.
And then went to school, UCO?
Yeah,
right?
Man, that you skipped a whole bunch. Like,
oh yeah, well, fill in the blank.
Let's fill in it. So, white wall tires. He then bought me a lawnmower, so that I could go throughout the neighborhood and cut grass. So it's kind of crazy because I tell people now that, man, I've really been blessed with the opportunity or the knack for work. Right? I've always had a job. I've always made money, and my dad just gave me this insight on just finding opportunities in every nook, in every cranny. Like I would recycle cans. I remember I was walking with my dad to the park, and you see something on the side of the road as a kid, and you kick it. You just kick it all the way home. And my dad was like, that's money, right? And I was like, well, what? It was like, yeah. So I would ride around on my bike and I would pick up cans, and he would take me to go recycle them. And so Dad was just super resourceful. So I went from tires to cutting grass to cans. The pastor at my church owned a security business, and so when I was 12 or 13, he would let me drive early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, to wake up, and I would drive him to all those little places. And he would pay me in a Crown Royal sack full of coins. My pastor, right? He'd be like, hey man, and I was like, how much is that? He was like, don't ask, like, here you go. And from there, I worked at Blimpie's Subs and Salads when I was in high school. And then this is where we get to how do I officially, in the field, the profession of people, how do I get into people? Right. Well, here comes the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club. I hear about a summer job. I go up there, it's May, and school is ending, right? Summer starts end of May, beginning of June. And I show up, and it's supposed to be this day where everybody shows up, meets everybody. I'm the first one that shows up, by the way. Dad always shows up early. I show up early, and he says, hey, the person who was supposed to train the group next week quit. How do you feel about talking in front of people? And I was like, I love people. I love talking in front of people. I've been talking in front of people my whole life.
Give me the mic.
Yeah, give me the mic. He sends me away for a week to learn the Salvation Army code and all stuff. I come back, and not only do I train the rest of the staff, but I become the lead facilitator for the next 2 years.
No kidding.
And so what I did was...
That's over in Tulsa?
That's in Tulsa.
Okay.
Yeah, right off Harvard. Harvard and, Apache. Right over the railroad tracks. And so that's 1999. I graduate in May. Right. I start working for the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club. And I've been doing this ever since, man.
Nice.
And it's
still doing it today.
Still doing it to this day. And it's amazing how something as simple as, hey son, like, we care for people. Yeah. That's what we do. Sure. How that at 6 and 7 and 8 just resonates throughout life. And this is something else that I want to tell people that are watching. Like, I think oftentimes people get caught up in a profession or a product, but I want to encourage people to not negate or neglect the process. Right? It's like the act of arriving, the process of arriving, of getting there, oftentimes outweighs the destination.
Oh, for sure.
Road trips.
Yeah.
You know how much you see on a road trip? And so many times people, they pass up everything to get where they want to go. Right? And the older I get, I learn by having kids. Like, what's that? What's that? Can we stop? What's that? What's that? What's that? And I'm like, man, I've been driving this way the whole time, and I've never seen that. Until you get somebody with a fresh perspective who appreciates the process and not just getting there. So I think people get caught up so much in providing a product or locking down a profession that they forget about becoming. They forget about growth. They forget about the process. And so I look back over this process that my dad just kind of intentionally brought me through, and I arrive at the doors of Salvation Army. Hey, do you want to serve people? Yeah, it was easy. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. What are you talking about? Of course I want to do that. And I've been doing it for the last 20 years, man. And
you've been expanding on it. I mean, in every way. So to not skip forward even farther, but to skip forward enough to where, so I started working at Chesapeake Energy in 2004. And so I knew Derrick because he was one of the leads at like the gym and the facilities of just all of the different sports. What I remember almost burned into my memory more than anything is whenever we would do like the energy games or whatever. Like you can see people that know how to touch people, to get connected with them. And the thing that everyone always was so just on board with Derrick about was the ability that he had to, whether it was one person, 5 people, 25 people, or an entire field full of people, he could motivate them, get them all aimed in the right direction, and pushing forward. And that was my first experience with you. And that's where we knew the campus was filled with people, and we knew a grand majority of the people's names, but you knew the people that were kind of the sparks. And I remember thinking of you as definitely one of those people that I want to get to know this guy because he has something a little bit different. And I think we all looked for people in our careers of who are the ones that are the ones that are going to bring out the best in everybody else. Right. And so I always really highly admired you for your ability to do that. And to see how this has transitioned to I didn't know about the Salvation Army, but I have followed you on what you've been doing after Chesapeake, and it's amazing to see the snowball continue to just grow down the hill into writing books, into finding a way to just kind of expand your influence. And I think that's something that's just absolutely commendable. So
it's so cool to hear, by the way, from somebody else's perspective.
Well, we need that, we need somebody to not it's not validation by any means. It's not validation, but it's one of those things of where we come in contact with so many people on just the careers that we have, but the people that we talk to on the phone each day, that our family, and so many other people, you start looking at all those different rings of how they're connected. And I think back of our careers and our time with everyone is so fleeting and so short. And the time that we're able to make a positive influence, hopefully, I can think of just as many people in my career that made a negative influence. Like people that I didn't glean a lot from, that I didn't build from. I didn't feel like it was giving me any personal growth. But when you are surrounded by people that are all trying to get to, trying to expand themselves, trying to build themselves, you need to tell them about it. And you need to make sure they know, because that gives them, hopefully, the motivation to continue doing that. Because who knows, where you're talking about your kids and everything, by the impressioning that you're able to give them and for what they're able to pull onto, they're going to be able to expand that out. And I mean, I think it's almost our duty, and especially in times like today. Got to,
man. And like you said, it's not validation. I think the word that came to mind was affirmation. When somebody's trying to do something and they do it, and it's received the way that they're attempting to do it, it's like you affirm that, hey, I see what you're doing, and what you're trying to do is received. I acknowledge that. And so it's not that I use those to validate what I'm doing, but it's, am I going the right way? And somebody's like, hey man, you're going the right way. And I'm like, thank you. And then I keep moving. Exactly. And so thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
I appreciate it.
So with Chesapeake, and you kind of got there and you were doing, a litany of side projects as well, it sounds like. So when did it start becoming obvious to you that you needed to, hey, I'm having these ideas that I'm kind of jotting down. Right. And I think I could probably make a book out of this deal. I always think it's very exciting for people to, that's something that lives on. Like at some point, calls us all. And we expire. But for somebody to, I think the written word, and I think song, I think everything else, to be able to leave something that kind of leaves that legacy, you took the initiative to do that. So what was kind of the story of being able to put that together?
Well, I don't know that, I did choose to do it, but I felt like it chose me, right? I would do these little blurbs on social media, and one of the things that my kids taught me, Dad, you move too fast. Dad, you talk too fast. Slow down. And so one of the things that we did as a family in the car, was to, during our car rides, was to look around and see what's happening. And so I don't know if you've ever been at a stoplight, man, but at a stoplight, if you look in other people's cars, you're seeing so many things. You're seeing fast food wrappers, you're seeing a soccer mom with 3 car seats in the back. You can see women who drive with their knees and put on makeup with their hands. I mean, you see all of these. You see people picking boogers and fixing their hair. Like, if you stop at a stoplight and you look at people, you begin to notice all these things. And so I would share the things that I noticed. And people begin to hit me in my inbox, just kind of these messages like, man, you should compile these. Like, you ever thought about like compiling these and putting them in a book? And I was like, well, it would just be a list of things. And they're like, no, just don't do the list, like expound on them. And I was like, that's a great idea. And so from that, I wrote the first book. Now, the cool thing about the book is that I was writing it even before I wrote it. Because as a speaker, as a motivator, as a trainer, all you're doing is taking these small concepts and then you're expanding them. Yeah, that's all you're doing. You're taking these small concepts, you're expanding them so that they're in these bite-sized pieces for people to consume. That's all you're doing. And I had already been doing that while I was at Chesapeake. Right. In fact, one of the trainers there, her name is Danielle, every quarter or so, we, around 2010, 2011, they started requiring groups to do this professional development, right? And one of the things that they did was Who Moved My Cheese, right?
Kind of remember that.
Who Moved My Cheese is a very small book, right? It's about these 4 mice, and they're in this maze, and they're used to showing up every day and the cheese being in the same place, but somebody moved it, and so these mice approach to finding the cheese differently. It's all it is. Right. Well, we did a 6-hour training, and I was like, shoot me in the face. Like, I could not do another one of these trainings. And so I started thinking like, man, I'm pretty good at taking these concepts and breaking them down a little bit better. Not to say that they didn't do it well, but we were in the room and we were locked up the whole time, and then they would click a PowerPoint slide, take a 15-minute break, come back, do another 45 minutes. And so I just started to think that, man, maybe I could do this a little bit differently. And then from there, it's how Omar's team building came, it's how the book came, it's how the speaking came. Awesome. And so it just kind of gradually developed. I was already interested in it. Some people were like, hey man, have you thought about like compiling that? And I was like, that's a good idea. And so I did it. And then book 2 came, and I'm working on 3.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I always liked I liked at Chesapeake the big training rooms that we had in all the buildings. Yeah. You know, like all the downstairs. And I always remember we kind of had a, not encyclopedia, but like an agenda for the upcoming months of these are all the different training classes that you could take. Yeah. And that was something Chesapeake just really was very powerful. Yeah. Of hey, we want to train our people, and we want to make sure that people are, you know, up on different books and different things like that. And I always thought that was so fun to be able to go in and whiteboard out ideas and to be able to kind of, like what you're saying of, here's the concept. Let's figure out how we can make this make sense to everybody here by putting it into a very linear fashion. Yeah. And you'd have that aha moment for people. And that was one of the most fun things to see of when you're working with a team or you're sitting at a table and you're working through some sort of a problem, and then everybody kind of comes to that realization. Yeah. And yeah, like I absolutely loved it.
Do you ever nerd out, like when you walk into a space, you see like all the potential? Like I'll speak specifically to the basement. Right. The ceiling to floor walls, and they were magnetic. Cool. Oh,
it's cool.
I was such a nerd on stuff like that, and I would just go in there and I play like 6 foot tall hangman. And I'm like, nope, X scratch. But I mean, I just geek out and stuff like that.
I think Aubrey and the management credit in those heydays of it. Yeah. So much credit goes to them for being like, what's going to make people nerd out? Yeah. Like, what's going to make people nerd out by the campus? What's going to make them nerd out in their training? Like, it is something as where I think people just getting into like work and everything, like early 20s, would be like, hey, you're going to sit all day in a training class. And they'll be like, not so much. But I really think that not just Chesapeake, but good forward-thinking companies. They say, how can we do this? How can we bring it in? And like yourself, of how can we bring in people that know how to reach, no matter what age group, How can we get them from that point A to point B, and how can we just really make it like a meaningful session? And that was the thing. Whenever I was in my 20s, like early 20s there, I did not care for that stuff until I got the first like 3 or 4 like under my belt, and I was like, man, I see what they're going for. How is this going to make my life better? And like they're actively working on me to be able to contribute back more to the company. And man, it was a highlight for me, absolute highlight.
But even things like this, I mean, what you all are doing with the videos and the podcast, like you're having conversations, and I want people to get out of the mindset of siloing their lives. Right. It's like I can be this person at work and a completely different person at home, and my job doesn't impact my marriage, and what I do doesn't. Those things overlap so much. And even this conversation, people are going to listen to this conversation and pull out how to be more active in the community, how to be a better professional, how to pursue my passion, my purpose through my profession. They're going to pull these little nuggets. That's the hope. We hope you all are able to pull that stuff out of this conversation, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, for me, it's people. Right? It didn't necessarily have to be that for everybody else. Right? I have a friend that absolutely despises talking to people, and so she works with animals.
That's cool.
That's her thing. That's her thing. In fact, she loves animals so much. When she was, I think she was like in a brownie or a cupcake place, and one of the Thunder players came in, and they had their dog with them, and so she's just talking to the dog, like, and he was like, "My dog doesn't like anybody," and she was like, "Oh, I love dogs." Ended up becoming like a dog walker.
Oh my gosh.
Which is crazy, because she's just being her. Out of who she naturally is, out of who she organically is, now she has a profession that fits her purpose and her passion, and that's to love on people through their animals. And so I think this concept isn't as siloed and separated as people try to make it. Like everything touches, everything overlaps, everything links together.
I think we make a lot of it harder than it needs to be. You know, and we almost like from the different conversations that I've had with different people, like sitting down here, and just like people that I've seen as mentors, like in my life and everything. A lot of times that's the topic of conversation. It's, why are we making this so hard on ourselves? Like you're doing it to yourself, whenever all you really need to do is be able to sit back, relax, open yourself up to these experiences, and move forward from there. So 2020, and we could really say this about like any. This year has thrown so many curveballs, or this last year has thrown so many curveballs.
Still curveballs coming.
Still curveballs coming. Lots of unrest. We could do 6 hours about all of that. I mean, just pandemic and politics and everything. From what I gather from a lot of people that watch this, and a lot of people that I'm in contact with in like my circles, there is a sense of people being a little bit down or depressed, or they feel a little overwhelmed by all of this. And like, you're a very upstanding family man, you're a motivator, you're somebody that people listen to. To those people like that are feeling that way, like, what's the message that you've told your friends, that you've told your family? Like, how have you told people that we're seeing that sunrise after a very bleak period, or a real dark?
I think that oftentimes people feel like their options are limited, and they have to choose from what's being presented. My wife oftentimes will struggle with what she wants to eat, because she can't think of like all of the options that are available. And so I sit next to her, and I'm like, all right, well, let's do it by genre. Like, do you want Mexican? Do you want burgers? Do you want wings? Do you want pizza? Do you want? She's like, nope. And eventually I'll say something, and she's like, I didn't think about that. Let's do that. And I think when people are looking at this life that we're living, I think they feel like they only have limited options. But you'll begin to see that as we evolve and progress as a people, the boxes on the applications, we start to add boxes, which means we add options, right? Just a very simple example is pronouns, right? There's been this his, he, him, right? We're adding they, them, their, right? And so for people who felt like I didn't want to check either one of those, the sigh of relief is like, I have a box that represents me, right? In this pandemic of isolation, my kids felt like I don't have the options. Like, you've taken my options away. And so I give them more options. I think people only choose from what they're aware of. And so when we start helping people with what does it look like to sit back, relax, and rest in something, what do you want to do? Do you want to read? Do you want to snowboard? Do you want to walk? Do you want to... The options, the world has to unfold for people so that they know that there's hope in areas that they didn't previously explore. And so for me, when I'm sitting and I'm talking to people and it feels hopeless and it feels bleak and it feels like a dead end, my job with them is to try to bust through that wall and see what the problem is, and if there are any boxes they can check to answer. Right? Okay, what's the issue? What are you doing? What's going on, man? Man, I just feel like I this dead end job. And I was like, well, why are you working? Well, I need the money. Well, what do you really want to do? I really want to be a photographer, but I can't make money being a photographer. You know how many photographers are feeding their families by taking pictures? Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so what do you need? You want some classes? You need a camera? Can you use portrait mode on your phone until you can fake it till you make it? Like, what can we do? Instead of quitting your job, can we make it a hobby and maybe transition into it? And so what I'm doing for them is I'm providing the options that they feel like they don't have. And lack of options is the creator of despair. When you don't have options, you feel like there's nothing I can do, the walls close in. But if there's a way that you can provide options, help people see that there are options, then I think hope begins to crack through.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. And I was thinking about while you were talking about that, of what options have I seen limited of. We used to love to, like, every Friday night was like date night, and we'd go out someplace and nice for dinner, and like we'd always find something fun to do on the weekend. But it was always like, I mean, it was with people. Right. It was events, it was Thunder games, it was all these different things. And for us, in that same mindset of what you're saying, we were saying, what are the options that are available to us? Well, we've got like the Hefner walking trail that's close to the house, so we go over to do that. Instead of going out to dinner night, we're doing like learning how to cook something new at home, and we know that. I think there's also that powerful thing of, and this goes for the people that are in those dead-end jobs and everything, is knowing that this isn't forever. Yeah. This isn't something that is going to, you're not stuck with this. You're not forced into this. It's up to you to make that change. Yeah. And so I totally get what you're saying of you have to kind of open yourself up and understand that there's something else there, but you have to be the one that makes that change. So I totally dig that you're the person that kind of helps get that conversation rolling for people. That's really neat.
And the only reason I know that it works is because someone did it for me. Right? I remember, again, sitting in Danielle's office, and she's like, Derrick, what's going on? Like, why are you peeking into this other stuff? Like, you're over in the fitness center, you're a rec coordinator, like, that's a pretty cush job. Like, I'm like, I know, man, but it's not feeding my soul. Like, what I really want to do, like, more than basketball, more than flag football, it's the impact that those sports have on people, right? Derrick Sier gets to coordinate and facilitate an experience that unplugs you from the computer and into the outdoors and into being up and active and connected. And for 30 minutes, 45 minutes over lunch, right? For an hour, maybe an hour and a half after work, for a weekend, if it's corporate challenge, like, I get to be a part of that experience. So it's not necessarily that I hate my job, but it's like I'm feeling a pull and a call somewhere else. And to have somebody walk through that process with me, I gotta pay it forward. So for somebody that showed me that there was life outside, and man, I'll tell this for people. There's a point in time where people, and we can relate to this, and I'll use Chesapeake as an example, people attach their identity to the company. For sure. Who they were was where they worked, right? And that the further the roots went and how they intertwined their lives and their friends and their families and daycare and benefits and the pharmacy and dry cleaning, and the more you just it was so hard to break through. And so people couldn't imagine life outside of what I did and where I worked.
Well, that's right.
Right? And so for you, if not you, but the metaphorical you, if you can get outside of I am what I do, right? Then I think that opens up the possibilities, right? Because if I'm an artist, I see art everywhere. I don't just see it in the studio. I have a friend that's a he's a rapper. He's also a producer, but he would get in trouble because the tick of the clock in the classroom, he'd be like he'd just be in class just because it was art everywhere. He would sit at a train and the ding, 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 like he would just be writing in his car and people would be like, when you don't put your seatbelt on, ding. Like art was everywhere for him. So no matter where he goes, whether it's LIS, Chesapeake, Arby's, Chick-fil-A, Amazon, Walmart, he's going to see art. He's looking for art in everything that he does. And if people can tap into that, like, how can I make my passion and my purpose, how can I make those two my profession, right? You're still in a check. I show up every day because I do it for free, but you're paying me. I still a check every month, and I never work a day in my life.
Right.
But I think people, they aren't conditioned to think in that manner, and so they spend half their life doing stuff that they hate only as a way to make money and fuel and fund a life that they want to live.
I never, I always read it, like there was a thing a long time ago, and it was like, no, money can't buy you happiness, and like that's the saying that everybody says. And I remember I saw something, and it was online, where the guy was like, money can't buy happiness, but he's like, I think it was Daniel Tosh, and he's like, have you ever seen a person not smiling on a jet ski? And he's like, you can't remove the smile from my face if I'm on a jet ski.
I love Tosh, by the way.
I do too. And like, I thought that the first few years of my career was, I was like, I will get money at any cost. At any cost. I would advance myself strictly to be able to see something change on a paycheck. Yeah. And there was an actual point in my life of where I was like, this is not worth this. Mm-hmm. And I thought that as quickly as life moves, the priorities that you're putting for just to make money as a side to do what you're passionate about. And I mean, where you're talking about, your friend listening to music and finding music in anything. Yeah. We do a stand-up here about every 2 weeks on a Tuesday where we'll watch like a video, or we'll have something that we can read, that's like something that's meaningful to us. And one of the ones that we had recently was just about that. And it said, a lot of people, you're not going to go to your work to find your passion. Mm-hmm. Your passion is going to be someplace else. And it's totally fine to, or like where you're saying with Chesapeake, it's totally fine to disconnect from that. Yeah. Do your job, make your living, but go out and actively find your passion. Yes. And I think it's something that a lot of people, we have such a short window of time of where we're here and where we're able to enjoy life like that. It's our duty, I think, to be able to get that out of ourselves, and for people like you to help push that out on people and help them realize that. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. To kind of get to a wrap up of what would you really say of from where your career is going, the next, we are still in a vein of incredibly active, incredibly working to do this. How do you see your bubble of your company, of your abilities? How are you looking to grow that over the next few years, or what is your plan of what you want to see for yourself? Right.
So I don't know how many people have like personal mission statements, but I do, and it drives everything that I do. And mine is helping others to grow better together. Right. I learned that from an early age. Like I said 30 minutes ago, right? I just learned very much so helping people grow better together. And so for my company, we started out as a training company, and the training company turned into this motivational, inspirational, and training company. Right. And then we add mentoring, and then we add authorship to it and publishing. We kind of broaden what we do all through the scope of helping others grow better together. I would love to see my company enter into post-secondary education. I would love to catch these young adults before they make these eternal decisions of employment and pursuing these jobs. And I would love to tap into the purity of what they want to do and who they want to be. I think oftentimes, man, it's just this money is the driving force,
right.
and it's this perceived prestige that they want. And I would be willing to bet if given another way to do it, that people would often pursue the alternative way. Right?
I completely agree with you.
And so for me, I want to get into this 18 to 21, this 18 to maybe even 25 area, and try to tap into their dreams and their hopes and their aspirations and that zeal and that fearlessness, right? That often appears as ignorance, but
No,
I think
it does. You're right.
Yeah, but there's something about this the 18 to 21 where you haven't quite calculated the cost, and so you don't know any better, right?
That's right.
And so I think there's something admirable about that we're not tapping into. And so how can I take this 8 years that I've been self-employment, just trying to do this training, inspiration, mentoring, get the word out? How do I take the previous 13 years of working in the corporate environment and being in the people business? How do I take that, smush it together and say, hey, young adult, I know you're graduating and maybe college isn't the best for you. Maybe it's a career tech, or maybe it's a certificate program, or maybe it is college. Maybe you need to take a gap year and discover what it is really.
Yeah.
But by the time you make that decision, right, I want you to have all the resources available so that you're making the most informed decision as possible. And if you can do that and maximize your 20s, you're not struggling so much trying to figure out who you are and rediscover this identity in your 30s and 40s.
I think that's incredibly powerful. I definitely think if anybody's going to accomplish that, I think that you've got that without question. It's going to be really neat to see how this grows for you.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we'll give of how can people get a hold of you,
Man.
and what's the best way to see more about Derrick?
Yeah. So I'd say social media is definitely the best way. Derrick Sier, S-I-E-R, Sier 55 on Instagram, and there's a Derrick Sier fan page on Facebook. So that's kind of where I interact the most. Man, I'm thinking about getting rid of my website.
Ooh.
I'm thinking about.
Is that like in today's day and age? Like is the website going out and other forms of communication coming in? You think? Or?
I don't know, man. I don't interact a lot on my website.
Okay.
It's the landing page is what I'm using it for, but man, so many people have contacted me through social media and through word of mouth.
It's growing.
It's just like I'm paying for hosting, and I'm like, oh, get out of here, man. So I don't know. But the best way to do it is through social media, or you can email me at sier.derrick@gmail.com. Just super simple. I'm laid back. I wish I had this extra level of perceived professionalism, but I'm just so casual that I'm like, man, just call me, just email me.
I am too. I think that's the thing that made me hit my ceiling at some point. I'm not gonna be more like jeans is my normal thing. And
Yes.
I was like, the way that a lot of people talk, yeah, it's not me. But man, I appreciate the time. I really do. And this is one of those things where find what you're passionate about. Be able to build that, do that for other people, and the main thing that we can do each day is we can keep learning and we can keep growing, and that's what we're here to do. So take care of yourself, and until next time.